Next, we welcome a true musical visionary and pioneer. Also a South Bristol boy, like myself. An artist and DJ who's been shaping the musical landscape from his very early years with the Bristol collective Fresh 4, his projects for labels like Talking Loud, V Recordings, Full Cycle, and many others. He's a daring and fearless music producer. Krust joins us today to discuss the process behind the writing, construction, and production of an album, both musically and psychologically. Giving us an insight into this compelling topic, give it up, please, for DJ Crust.
Can you hear me? Yeah? This better? All right, cool. So before we get started, I want to suggest that about 10 to 15 minutes before we get to the end, I want you to think about, and through the talk, I want you to be thinking about some questions that you might have that I can actually add value to, that is really going to, make a difference in what you guys are going to be doing. Does that make sense? Think about what he just said and where I've come from, and not South Bristol, but my music journey, and think about, what that question might be. I've got a vast experience in this business. I started off as a T-boy, ended up being signed to Def Jam in America, so I've done quite a bit. So my job here today, right now, in this next 45 minutes, is to give you as much value and, in-depth experience and in-depth knowledge and behind-the-scene knowledge as I can. So no question is stupid. Everything is open, and I'll tell you as much as I can. And does that work for you guys? Yeah, good. So my whole philosophy on music is about, originality, authenticity. That's how I've built my name. That's how I became, the DJ Crust and all the things he talked about. Is it easy to do that? I would say it is. Most people would say it was quite hard. In this room right now, how many people are full-time music producers who are making a living from it? So everybody else has got a passion for music, or you want to get into music. What's the demographics? Shout some stuff out. Tell me where you're at. Want to be a producer. DJ. Already producer. Got music out? Music coming out. Who's stuck? Who? Yeah, okay, good. Right, okay. So about 15 years ago, after all my musical journeys, I went through the whole thing. We started Full Cycle. We got signed to V, we got signed to Talking Loud, we got signed to Def Jam in America, toured over the world. After 7 years of that, guess what happened? Crash and burn, right? It was exhausting. We toured for 7 years non-stop. Fucking exhausting. My music career took a dive. I couldn't, it just was a real chaos, right? But one thing I remembered that kind of helped me get through the whole journey was I kept meeting people on the road, and they kept asking me, how did you become a DJ? How did you start to make records? And in my kind of sabbatical, I started to think about that question. I thought, well, how do you make music? How did I make music? What was the turning point for me? How did I start to become a DJ? How did you start a label? So that was my journey 15 years ago, and it was a real sort of deep dive into how people think. So I studied the hell out of it. I studied psychology, philosophy, spirituality, business, economics, anything that showed me how people think and why people think and why people do what they do, and more importantly, why people don't do what they say they want to do. And that was very, very powerful, because first of all, what it did for me was it helped me understand the process of creativity, but also it helps me totally reorganize the way that I did everything from that point onwards. So what I want to share with you today is a few ideas that I think are very, very valuable and that can possibly help you get unstuck. Now, only 2 people put up their hand when I said they're full-time people doing this. The rest of you, you're wanting to do it, you want it to be a full-time career, you wanted to, get it out of the bedroom and into the real world, right? Yes or yes? Yeah. So, it's easy. No, I'm fucking with you. It's fucking hard. No, really, it's easy. So, it's easy because, why I say it's easy, because it is easy. You all know what to do. You just don't want to do it, right? We always know what to do. We just don't want to fucking do it. It's that internal self-talk. So it's 80% psychology, 20% mechanics, right? What's the difference that makes the difference? If everybody is using the same plugins, the same software, goes to the same lectures, watches the same YouTube fucking tutorials, what's the difference that makes the difference? How do you stand out? Sorry? You express yourself, yeah, what else? Sorry? Make good music, what else? Opportunity, experiment, authenticity, yeah, all of those things. The one thing all of those things come from, though, is the mindset. If the playing field is level, and we all got the same equipment, we all got the same plugins, the same software, the only thing that now separates us, and the 10-year-old in the bedroom now, making beats, because there's a shit-hot 10-year-old now, somewhere in the world, crushing it. Right? Think about it. I started at 14. That was quite a while ago. The technology back then was fucking ancient. Think about what the technology and how easily available now. What are those 10-year-olds studying now? Maybe even they're younger. Maybe it's a 9-year-old girl, 8-year-old girl, crushing it on an iPhone. We're all competing with that. We're all competing with Friday and Saturday night fucking ice skating, rollerblading, right? Netflix. This is the competition. So how are you going to get the unfair advantage? Thinking differently. This is why it's so hard for us to do what we don't want to do. We're habitually programmed to stay comfortable. We're habitually programmed to stay safe. Why do I say that? Because to be different, to think different, means that you've got to be not like everyone else. Right? You've got to step out of your comfort zone, right? You've got to think differently, do differently, and then all of a sudden, you've got to present your stuff to the world for them to judge it, right? Right? You remember that? When you've got to actually present your music to people, and then you're waiting for them to say something. You're looking in their eyes, and you're nervous. That stomach starts churning, and you're like, oh, are they going to like it? Are they going to like it? Fuck, who cares if they like it? That's the problem. We're addicted to approval, right? You want someone to like it. You want someone to like me. The biggest challenge you're going to have to face if you want your career to go like a hockey stick, right, is to overcome that limiting belief that it matters what other people think. That's the thing that is holding you back. It's not technique, and it's not technology. And it's not all those things that you guys said, although they are important. But once you get over that self-limiting belief of what you think is important, you will fly. Okay? And I get it. It's much harder now because of social media and the noise and the da-da-da and the da-da-da. But somehow you're going to have to separate yourself from that. You're going to have to isolate yourself, and you're going to have to go into your little cocoons, and you're going to have some real hardcore self-belief and really start tapping into what it is that makes you you. You're going to have to tap into what makes you you. In my mind, there's about 40, 50 people here. There should be 40 or 50 genres in this room. Okay, does that make sense? There is no more jungle, dubstep, hip-hop, house. Those are boxes. Those are limitations. Right? They're structures. When we made jungle music, right? This is a true story. When I started to make jungle music, I was actually trying to make hip-hop. No one liked it. They fucking hated it, right? I got slated so many times, like, the intro's too long, Krust. What is that bass line doing that? I don't know why I'm doing an Old West voice. Listen, I got killed, right? They hated what I was doing. But I knew, what they didn't know was, I wasn't really concerned about their opinions, right? I knew that what I was doing was a process. It wasn't quite right yet. And I was testing it on people to see how they would react to it. And I got the reaction. So for me, whenever I hear no, it means try somebody else. Okay? If someone says no, I don't like it, I say, good, it's not for you, then try someone else. Right? So I see failure as feedback. Don't get me wrong, when people don't like my shit, it still hurts, but it's not a big deal. I've got a proven track record. So for me, I know that I'm going to eventually get it. Do I make rubbish, clunky tunes? Yes, all the fucking time. Yeah, of course I do. But do you know what I do? I have a high fucking turnover. I make music in batches of 40. Right? So if I sit down for 2 weeks, I'm making 40 tunes at once, not one. I'm making 40 fucking tunes. Because I know I'll get 10 out of that, and maybe 5 out of that is going to be working, and 2 will be the ones. Right? Who works like that? Good. So you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a hip factor. Back in the full cycle days, why we were so prolific, apart from there being 5 of us, we never fucking stopped making music. And we didn't care if it didn't work. If it didn't work, we would make a tune. 2-3 hours. Is it working? No, scrap it, go another one. Make a tune. Is it working? Scrap it. No, make another one. Make a tune. That just keeps you moving. So the whole idea behind why most people are stuck, because you're overthinking the process. You're overthinking what you're actually doing, thinking that the track that you're making is really important. It's not. That's not the one that's really important, okay? It's going to be number 20 before you even hit your stride. Right? It's number 20 before you even hit your stride. And then it'll be number 30 before you even start to relax into it. And then when you get to 40, you'll be like, okay, I'm doing something different now. This making sense? I did have some notes, I haven't fucking started them yet. Fuck it. Is this useful? Because the thing that makes the difference that I found is all about the psychology of it. It's been nothing to do with technology, not one bit. Because if it was about technology, we should have made an album today that could beat Michael Jackson's Thriller. If it was about technology, we would have made an album right now that would have beat Michael Jackson's Thriller. Do you agree? But we haven't. So it isn't technology. Yeah, it is arguable. I'm a fan, but it is arguable. But what in the last 20 years has had the same impact as those guys, as Bowie, or the Beatles, or Michael, or what can we say apart from genres like Jungles had a massive impact, it's had a massive resurgence. Hip-hop, the culture of hip-hop is phenomenal. Dubstep, the way that dubstep impacted the world is phenomenal. You know, the way that Stormzy and Skepta impacted British culture is phenomenal. Right? So we have to know that, first of all, let me ask you guys a question. Do you believe that on some level it is possible for you to get this dream that you have? Only a few of you are nodding. Yeah, that's true. Some of them do, but they don't want to step into it. See, that's the first thing. If you're not visualizing yourself taking those actions, seeing yourself doing it on a regular basis, you will find it hard to actually take the action, and then you will be devastated when you get the knockback. Right? The biggest muscle that you can exercise in this business is the no muscle. Get used to it. It doesn't mean anything. Because if it did, I would not be here. Listen, when we were making Jungle, I heard so many people tell me I was making the devil's music, that I should go home, that it's a noise, that it's a racket, that it will never be big. Krust is a terrible name. You should change it to something like Groove Rider. I've heard it all, right? I've heard it all. Believe you me, I've heard it all. But the one thing that I stuck my guns to was the music. And I never believed that even one day I'd be here talking about it. All I believed in was the next tune. That's always been my focus. What's the next tune? What's the next beat? What's the next bass line? And I will spend more time than anybody else in the studio. So we had this fun thing that we used to do. When we'd be in the studio, and it'd be 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, we're fucked. We're going to someone's falling asleep, and we're just about to call it a night, and someone would say, "Dylan, just still up," and you'd be like, "Quick, let's go!" And it was crazy, but it worked. And 7 o'clock in the morning, it's like, "All right, I don't care who's up." But it was like this energy, this motivation. It's like, what is your motivation? What is it that you are trying to do? Like, if you can find your why. Right? If you find the most meaningful thing that you can feel that's going to change the world, right? So we were naive to believe that we could change the world. And it wasn't really, oh, we're going to change the world. It was like, fuck you, we're going to change this system. Because we were angry. We were angry guys we felt we were left out by the system. School had failed us. The government at the time had failed us. You could only buy a couple of bags of weed with your dole money. That's a shit deal. Right? After you bought records, you didn't have fuck all left, right? So we were just angry and frustrated. And so our thing was, let's not be these stereotypical angry youth. Let's apply that energy into the music. Let's sit in the studio and let's get our anger out into the music. Let's channel this into the music. Let's put our message into the music. And that was our initial fire. That was our initial way of getting going, right? Of G'ing each other up, of trying to get each other to do what we didn't want to do. Because all you people in here who said, oh, I'm not doing it, or I'm uncomfortable doing it, we felt the same. We felt the same. There were days when we did we did a Represent show, the very first Represent show, and we played as DJs all over the world in front of thousands of people. The first Represent show we did, we were fucking shitting ourselves. We were cowered in this corner, and no one wanted to look out past the fucking curtains. We practiced for months and weeks, but we were terrified. We were fucking scared. Hearts pumping, pounding, stomachs churning, that horrible feeling. But we kind of looked at each other and it was like, it's now or never, guys. Right? It's now or never. Right? 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 Because if not now, then when? When? Right? You got to think about it. If not now, then when? Like, what's going to happen in the future that's going to change it? right? If you're not prepared to do what it takes right now, when you leave here tonight and wake up tomorrow morning with this plan, this mission, this clarity of purpose, right? If that hasn't hit you right now, when is it going to hit you? Right? Think about that. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? You've all been in that situation, right? When you knew you had to step up, right? And there's something inside of you said, it's now or fucking never, right? We've all been there, haven't we? Yes or yes? Yes or yes? I need some motivation, guys. This is a two-way thing here. Yes or yes? Yeah, come on. I'm the Black Tony Robbins right now. The better looking one. So, when you really think about it, what is it going to take to get over that line? You can spend months getting new technology. You can spend months, watching more tutorials. You can spend months, going to other classes, and the only thing that's going to get you to that next level is taking that first step. It's going to be uncomfortable. My advice to you, if you're heading in this direction, because this is one of the most competitive industries in the world, and especially today, the competition is redonkulous. Not ridiculous. This is 2 to the times of the 0, redonkulous, right? This is fucking MC squared shit, right? Because it's true. Think about how busy it is out there. Think about how social media is blowing the whole game up. Think about how the new generations coming up, making music faster and quicker. They don't go to work. They don't have the 9 to 5 or the distractions that some of you guys have. So what is it going to take for you to get over that fucking finish line? Shift in what you believe is possible. So some of you are overthinking the process. Who's overthinking the process? Yeah, of course. It must be something else. No, it's not. Start with what you know. Start with what you know, right? Break it down. What is the easiest, most simplest thing that you can start with when you leave here? What is it? Shout some stuff out. Make 40 tunes. What? Bass? Yeah, bass. No, seriously. Okay, true story. For years, everyone kept asking how I made. Everybody know Warhead, my tune Warhead. Right, so you wanted the sub bass bit in the intro. So if you know how I made it, don't say anything, right? I've told the story a few times. So for years, people were asking, how did you make that sub bass? What did you use? A Moog, a fucking this, a that. I never said anything for years. Nearly 15 years I didn't say anything, right? And I just let the rumor mill go on the forums. They'd be like, how'd you make that bass? How'd you make that bass? So I thought, fuck it, I'm going to tell them. I did a talk in this school, and do you want to know how I made the bass? Do you want to know how I made the bass? I'll tell you at the end. So, how I made the bass in Warhead, it was the feed. I touched the wire and it fed back, and so I had the humming sound, and then I sampled it. That was it. Legendary track that's fucking, did whatever it did. The ridiculous bass that everyone said was made by this exclusive fucking synthesizer was made by me touching a wire. Happy accident, right? That taught me a massive lesson about not to overthink shit. Keep it simple. Like, keep it simple. Just start with what you know and build on that. The reason why I do 40 tunes in a row is because I'm just able to be able to do that. And the reason why I was able to do that is because I was in my slump and I was stuck. I wasn't making any music. I was doing the same old thing. I was trying to make another Soul Emotion. I was trying to do another True Stories, and it's just terrible. It was just sounding horrible, right? And I got asked to make a library sample album by this company called Standard Music. And I went into the office, and they said, right, do you know what library sample is? I said, no, what is it? So you can make sounds, and they can be like a second long, or 2 seconds, or up to like 4 minutes. I said, what do you mean? It's like, you just make sounds? And I said, yeah. I was like, wait a minute, so you're going to pay me to sit in a room for 3 months and just make sounds. They said, yeah. I was like, fucking hell. But right? So something changed. Something changed in my head, right? I was in the studio for 3 months, and all I did was make fucking sounds, right? But something amazing happened. In this process of just making sounds, I had one of the best liberating musical experiences of my life. I started to make music that I'd never made before because I didn't feel any pressure to make any music. Right? I wasn't making music. I was making sounds. But every time I was just I'd have a 2 or 3 hour session just making sounds, all of a sudden, I'd have like this palette of sounds, and the track would just speak to me. It was simple. It was really easy to do. It was like, that was the bass line, that's the synth line, and there's the breaks. And all I did, I just put them together, and I did a 32 bar loop, and then I left it there. And then I did the same thing, and then I did the same thing, and then I worked on this one arrangement for 2 months. I didn't start a new tune, I just kept everything on one arrangement. And after 2 months, I looked at what I did, and I had like these loads and loads and loads of 32 bars. And then it was like, fuck, this is like a jigsaw puzzle, right? I started to take a beat here, put the bass there, and I just started experimenting. And what I didn't do was think, right? I stopped thinking. I wasn't judging what I was doing. I was just doing it. And then I would have this, this mad session, and then the next day I would come in and I would listen to what I'd done. And okay, maybe that bass might fit better over there. So it was this whole process of just letting go, letting the process happen, and just being open and not judging what I'd done. And after that period, it was amazing. That became my mode of making music. And what I learned from that was, when I was thinking about trying to make jungle music, nothing happened. When I was just making sounds, everything happened. So I started to take a step back. I thought, where else can I apply this? Where else can I apply this? This stop thinking thing. And so it became a big part of my whole way of doing stuff. So, is this making sense, guys? Because when we are thinking, we're thinking about what we're thinking, right? So you're not being creative. The mind can only think about a few things at one time. So if you're thinking about what you're thinking, and if you're thinking in the studio, what is someone going to like? So I have to make a tune in this genre that someone's going to like, because I need to get bookings or I need to get paid, right? Which one is it? Bookings or getting paid, or both? Sorry? Either of them. Neither. No, but really, what is it that stops people from doing it? They're thinking, I know what you're saying, but they're thinking that this tune is going to get me bookings, right? Or this tune, I need to get paid from so that I can make a living, right? That line of thinking won't help you. So if you're trying to stop making whatever work you're doing on a day-to-day basis and you're trying to transfer it into making a living from music, you have to figure out how you're going to transfer your income, right? And that's a big fucking challenge. And that is a big fucking stop for people. That's difficult. Right? It's a challenge. We haven't got the scope to get deeper into that in this conversation, but I do help people with that. Is there any questions?
Come on, don't be shy. Oh, wrong mic, sorry. One of them's got some length.
Peace.
Yeah, I just want to ask, have you ever compromised on a record for, say, working with a label? Have you ever felt pressure to change anything about your music and had to do it for whatever reasons?
No, and that's been a problem, yeah. So the question is, have I ever compromised for a label? No, I haven't, and it's been a problem. The problem is, I didn't get the job.
I've got another one over here.
I mean, the reason why I said no is because, I'm a firm believer in the brand and the idea. Like, the money was ridiculous, but my whole thing was, what do I do after that? Right? It's like, what's going to happen after? I built my career on making groundbreaking music that's not popular. And everyone talks about Warhead, but the thing about Warhead, and when I made it, no one liked it. Like, no one liked it. No one. I'm not kidding, right? Only the Full Cycle guys and Brian G and Frost. There's like 5 of us. I'd play that tune out every week, and it would clear the dance floor for 8 fucking months. Figure that, right? Who would do that today? 8 months, we all played that tune out, and it was clearing dance floors. People would be dancing, getting down, and then you were boo, 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 boo. Listen, it was cold, and then something magical happened. Month 10 started to change. They were like, you mix it in, and people would be like, "Oh, there's that bass," and they start to get it. Month 12. You couldn't get past 4 minutes, right? And did I think the tune was going to do that when I made it? No, but I knew I had something. Did I think it was going to be a special tune? No, I just knew it was different. So there's 2 types of different in my world, right? We're making music. There's different when it's different and it's interesting enough to get people's attention, and it can work if you're persistent. And then there's different for the sake of different. That's just awkward different. That just is not going to work. So Warhead was different and interesting different. And so, my thing is how I think about everything. So when everyone goes right, I go left. And I don't do that because, I'm trying to be different or anything. I always think about how the world's working, how the culture's working, how the movement is working, how the dance floor is working, how equipment is working. I really look at the whole landscape. I think, how can I fit into this without sounding like anybody else? How can I really add to the culture? What can I bring that's not already here that's going to add to the culture, that's going to make it better because I'm involved in it, right? I don't need to go into the culture and sound like everybody else. That's already there. What's the point of me doing that? What's the point of me spending 18 hours a day in a studio making music that already exists? There's no point in it, right? So my whole philosophy is, I'm going to spend time in the studio and I'm going to bring something to the world that doesn't exist, right? Is it hard? Yes. Is it rewarding at the end? Yes. Right? So it's about really trying to understand who you are, right? And someone said earlier about being authentic. Of course, that is your USP, authenticity. That's your signature sound. What's your signature sound? If I said to you, what's your signature sound, who could tell me what that is? If I played your record, would I know it was you straight away off the bat within the first 2 minutes? Right? That's what it's about. When you hear a Dr. Dre tune, within the first minute, you know it's a Dre tune. When you hear Snoop Dogg rap, you know it's Snoop Dogg. When you hear a Pharrell beat, you know it's Pharrell. That type of signature sound is why they are where they are. Right? That is the secret sauce to this whole game. It takes longer to develop. Sometimes it's a hit and miss, but there's a psychology and a philosophy behind it, and it's about staying true to who you really are. When you stay true to who you really are, you cannot fail. It might take a bit longer to get there, but you cannot fail. And this is about that self-belief, that knowing, that deep down inside, that you've got a place in this world, and you've got something of worth. You've got a message that's got to come out, and people have to hear it. And it fucking keeps you up at night. Right? That's all you think about. Your friends are fucked off because they're bored of hearing it. right? Billy No Mates, that's me. I annoy the shit out of people because I talk about the same fucking thing all the time. I'm relentless. I'm annoying. I'm the fucking itch. Right? But it pays off because the way that I now think, I've applied it in my music, in my business, in my talks, and it really is about stretching your vision, stretching your beliefs about what's possible.
So I had a question. How do you know when a track is done?
How long's a piece of string? It's done when the label tells you we're mastering tomorrow, or we're mastering in another 5 minutes. Tracks are never finished.
Sorry. So you said you smash out 40 tracks in one go. At what point do you go, do you know what? That track is done. I'm going to move on to track number 27.
I just sweep through them. I'll sweep through them. So I'll get the sampler up. So I work with a Roland V-Synth with samples. So I'm trying to go back to get the E64 out as well. So then I've kind of got my palette all out, and then I'll just go through number one. I'll listen to it, and I'll go through it. As I'm listening to it, I'll go through the keys and find something, and then if it absolutely is nothing left to fit in it, then I'll move on. Then I'll go to the next one, do the same thing. Okay, well that string might sound good in that one. Put it in there. It's too much, too little. Maybe take that one out. Okay, leave it that one, move on. So we do that with all of them. Just keep going through until it sounds just cooked.
Who inspired you to make music?
Good question. I think it was just having a real love and passion for music, growing up in a musical household. There was always Motown playing, my mum was always singing, my brother introduced me to the specials. And at 14 I saw Wild Star, this film called Wild Star, and that completely just changed my world really. And I never stopped since then.
Anyone else got a question?
If your music is original and not easily pigeonholed and you've not already sort of broken through, how do you get your music out there?
You're the one-man marketing machine. So you do it yourself. You start your own podcast, you start your own radio show, you start your own nightclub, you do it all yourself. In the beginning when we started Jungle, we thought no one else was doing it. So we went and got a radio station and we started playing on the radio. And then we did the back room in Lakota. And we found existing clubs, and then we did the small room, the second room. So we just did that. And then slowly but surely, someone came, another person came. Mixtapes. So we did loads of mixtapes. Mixtapes, radio. You just got to build it up slowly. In this day and age, it is possible to go straight like that. So most people think when they put out a record, it's going to go like that. It's like, I still put out tunes, and it takes weeks for people to get used to it still. It's like, I'm kind of used to the process. My whole thing is the long game. Accumulation. Just accumulate. With new tunes, so here's the psychology behind new. It takes 11 months for people to get new. So you know that the adoption curve, right? Early adopters, fast followers, right? That's how it actually is. In the beginning, I'll refer to Jungle because that's my sort of main experience. But in the beginning, we made Jungle. We were the early adopters. Other producers were the early adopters, and the people around us as well. So we had our crew around us, groups of guys and girls who we hang out with. We had like little parties in the studio. They would hear the music, and they were getting used to it as we were making it. So then it wasn't different for them. So then after the initial early adopters hear it, you have the second wave, which are the fast followers. Now these people were influenced by the early adopters. The early adopters were the ones who go out and saying, have you heard this new music? Have you heard this new music? The fast followers are like, oh yeah, we've heard this new music, and then they start coming to the dance. So when we first started out, we do parties, maybe 100 people. So when we started DJing abroad, going to Eastern Europe and places like that, France, Amsterdam, we played to 150 people. We go there 6 months later, there would be 300 people. And this would be the same in the UK as well. You go there another 9 months there, there'll be 500 people. You go there 2 years later, there'll be 2,000 people. So everyone's telling everybody. People are taping the sessions and they're giving tapes and music to people to listen to. And eventually the culture is spreading. There's an ideology behind it. We never call it jungle music. That name was given to the scene by other people. I never remember us calling, oh yeah, we're making jungle music. That was given to the scene. So these scenes just grow organically, they grow naturally, and they grow over time. And so whenever you have something new and you're building a project or a product, it's going to work, but it will take time. I like to work on an 18-month curve on all of my projects. So I just say, this is going to take 18 months before it gets to where I need to get to. And I will build it organically as possible, so I won't pay for ads. And I'll just go and talk about it. I'll go and hype people up. I'll be like spreading the rumor mill, and there's tactics and ways to do that. But you've got to get people excited. You've got to get people on your side. You've got to get people, tuning into this new message. And so one of the things that I would absolutely say that helps when you're building something new is, what is the mission behind it? What's the ideology behind it? What is the meaning behind it? Right? When you add those things into this music, it's very, very powerful. We as human beings, we love stories. And we love to make meaning out of something. So when you add meaning to it, it takes it to a whole nother level. It's not just this hedonistic dance music. It's actually culturally relevant because we're talking about some disenfranchised people who don't have a voice, and this music now is representing them. Everyone's like, really? I need to hear that. Right? Very, very powerful. As opposed to, what's your music about? Oh, it's fucking banging bass line, isn't it? Everything's banging bass line, mate. Right?
Right, I think we've got time for one more question. Got any takers?
So, before that, remember the question I asked in the beginning? That there was one or two things that I could absolutely help you make a difference in. I know I've been sharing loads of things, but I'm sensing that there's a question out there or something that someone doesn't want to ask it. I want you to say.
I think we have a winner.
Okay. Is it?
How do you deal with, obviously now with social media, you have to put yourself out there. If you're not that kind of person,
yeah.
I struggle to, every time I write a post, I just feel like people don't want to hear, do you know what I mean? It's hard to put yourself in that place. How do you get over that?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yes, how do you get...
But what are you talking about?
Well, posting up your stuff to show people,
You posted up my stuff?
No, my stuff. Say, for example, you're writing to promote yourself, but it's hard when you're kind of like an introvert person. You don't want to... It's hard to put yourself out there. How do you get over the mindset of thinking that people do actually want to hear...
the story.
Yeah.
Focus on your story. What is your story? Why should people be interested in you?
Yeah, why are you doing this?
Why? You don't think about that. What you should do, what I do, is I sit down and I write out at least 2 or 3 pages of what is the story behind what a project is. So I don't really necessarily post or go on social media unless there's a project that I'm actually a part of or sort of moving towards. I have a few, so the music stuff, if you look on most of my music thing, I'm only talking about an event that I've gone to or I'm playing at. On my Instagram, it's just blacked out. I've got a project coming, so there's nothing for me to talk about. I'm not just going to keep it going so that it's not me. I'm like you, it's not really what I'm about. But when it's time for you to put out a project, what's the story? So think about, what's the story? Why are people going to be interested in you? What is it that they need to stop what they're doing to listen and look at what you're doing? And then once you figure that out, write some paragraphs, right? And then once you write the paragraphs out, it's easy because then you just pick out the best stuff, right? And then you have to get used to just detaching yourself from the outcome because you're focusing on your product and getting it out to the world because this is the shit. People need to hear it. Right? And even if they don't want to hear it, they fucking should want to hear it, right? That's the attitude, right? So if they do want to hear it, you have to find a way to interrupt them. with something interesting, more interesting than cats. Right? That's what we're competing with, kittens. Right? It's true. So, so think about that. Like, what is your story? Why is it important? Why do I need to hear it? What have you got that's going to make my life better? Right? And then I'm going to pay some attention to that.
That was absolutely brilliant. Really, really inspirational stuff there. Crust, many, many thanks.